Your parents bought their first home on a single income. You earn more than they did. You are on paper more educated than they were, and you still can't afford the same house. This is not your fault. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly who rigged it. Because there is a number that haunts an entire generation. It is the price of a home. Not a mansion, not an investment property, just an ordinary house, on an ordinary street, in an ordinary city. For your parents, that number was within reach. Difficult, maybe. A stretch, but reachable. They could save for a few years, put down a deposit, and step onto the ladder. For you, that same number has drifted somewhere just beyond the horizon, and the front door of an ordinary home has quietly closed. You're told it's your fault, that you should have saved harder, skipped the avocado toast, cut the subscriptions, started earlier. But here is something strange. This isn't happening to one unlucky person. It's happening to almost everyone in almost every major city at almost exactly the same time. And when a problem is that widespread, that synchronized, it stops being a story about personal failure. It becomes a story about the system itself. So today we're going to investigate the single largest expense of your life. We're going to look at how the housing market actually works, why it stopped working for ordinary people, and the uncomfortable question almost no one asks out loud. Who is this market actually built to serve? I'm Capital Inspector, and this is why you can't afford a house. Let's start with the explanation you've already heard. The story goes like this. Houses are expensive because there aren't enough of them. Too many people, too few homes. Supply and demand. Build more houses, prices come down. Simple. And there is truth in that. In many cities, we genuinely have not built enough homes. Zoning laws, permits, and local opposition have all slowed construction for decades. But supply and demand cannot explain everything. Because if this were only about a shortage of houses, then the price of a home would track the income of the people buying it. When people can't afford more, prices stop rising. That is how a normal market works. That is not what happened. Over the past 2 decades, in cities across North America, home prices rose 2, 3, sometimes 4 times faster than wages. The gap didn't close, it exploded. If buyers were ordinary families spending ordinary paychecks, that gap is impossible. Families cannot pay prices that their incomes do not support. The math simply breaks. So either the laws of economics stopped working, or there is another buyer in this market. A buyer who does not rely on a paycheck. A buyer we need to talk about. To understand the modern housing market, you have to understand a quiet transformation that happened over the last 40 years. A house slowly stopped being just a home, and it became something else, a financial asset. Think about what that means. A home is a place you live. An asset is something you own to make money. The moment a house becomes both, 2 completely different kinds of buyers start competing for the same front door. And they are not playing by the same rules. The first force that reshaped this market is cheap money. For most of the last 2 decades, interest rates were held extraordinarily low. When borrowing is cheap, people can borrow more. And when everyone can borrow more, they bid more. The price of the house rises to absorb every dollar of cheap credit the system makes available. Low rates did not make houses more affordable. They made them more expensive because they simply handed everyone a bigger loan to bid with. The second force is the arrival of the investor. When interest rates are near zero, money sitting in a bank earns almost nothing. So large pools of capital, pension funds, private equity firms, real estate investment trusts went searching for something, anything that produced a reliable return. And they found housing. In some North American markets, investors now account for 1 in every 4 or 5 homes sold. In certain neighborhoods, far more. They arrive with cash. They don't need a mortgage approval. They don't have a family waiting on the decision. And against a buyer like that, an ordinary family with an ordinary loan loses, again and again. The third force is the one almost no one sees. Housing became a place to store wealth. For people who already own assets, a home is no longer just shelter. It's a vault. It holds value, it rises over time, and it can be borrowed against. The more prices rise, the wealthier existing owners become, and the more incentive there is to keep prices rising. An entire layer of the economy now depends on housing staying expensive. And that is the quiet truth at the center of this market. Rising prices are not a malfunction. For a large and powerful group of people, rising prices are the entire point. Let's bring this down to one person. Let's call her an ordinary buyer. She does everything she's supposed to. She earns a solid income. She saves diligently for years. She finally has enough for a deposit and she starts looking. The first thing she discovers is that the home she can afford on paper is not the home that exists in reality. The 2-bedroom she imagined costs 40% more than the bank will lend her. So she looks further out. Longer commute, older building, smaller space. Then she finds something. She makes an offer, a strong offer, the full asking price, and she loses, not to another family, to a cash buyer who offered more, waived the inspection, and closed in a week. This happens again and again. Each time, the price of the thing she is chasing climbs a little higher, while her savings, sitting in the bank, quietly lose ground to inflation. Eventually, she does the math that millions are now doing. To buy an average home in her city, she would need to spend not 3 or 4 times her income. The old rule of thumb, but 8, 9, sometimes 10 times what she earns in a year. That is not a mortgage. That is a sentence. So she keeps renting. And here is the cruelest turn. Her rent is rising too, because in many cities, the same investors buying the homes are also buying the rental buildings. She is now paying down someone else's asset, month after month, while the door to owning her own drifts further away. This is not a woman who made bad choices. This is a woman playing a game whose rules were rewritten while she was getting ready to play. Now we arrive at the question I promised at the start. Who is this market actually built to serve? Here is the uncomfortable answer. The modern housing market works almost perfectly. It is just not working for the person trying to buy their first home. It is working for everyone who already owns. Think about the incentives. Existing homeowners want their property values to rise. It's most of their net worth. Investors want prices to rise. It's their return. Banks want prices to rise. Bigger loans mean bigger profits. Governments are wary of prices falling because a housing crash takes the whole economy down with it. Look closely and you'll see something striking. Almost every powerful group in the system benefits from housing becoming more expensive. And the one group that benefits from housing becoming cheaper, the people who don't own yet, is the group with the least power to change anything. That is why nothing changes. Not because the problem is too complex, not because no one has solutions. There are dozens of solutions. It's because the people harmed by high prices are politically weak, and the people who benefit from high prices are politically strong. The housing crisis is not a failure of the market. It is the market, functioning exactly as its incentives demand. A machine quietly converting the basic human need for shelter into a reliable stream of wealth, flowing from those who don't own to those who already do. Once you see that, you can never unsee it. So where does that leave you? I won't pretend a single video can hand you the keys to a home. Anyone who tells you there's one simple trick to beat this market is selling you something. But understanding the machine changes how you move through it. It tells you that the pressure you feel is real, and that it is not a verdict on your worth or your discipline. It tells you to stop measuring yourself against a finish line that was quietly moved, and it tells you where to look. Because markets like this do change, eventually. Not through individual effort, but when enough people stop believing the story that it's their personal failure and start asking the harder question out loud. Who is this built to serve? And why are we letting it stay that way? That question is the beginning of every real shift that has ever happened in an economy. In the next episode, we follow the money one step further. We look at the institutions that hold your debt, your mortgage, your loans, your future payments, and we ask how an entire industry came to profit from the simple fact that you owe. If this gave you a clearer view of the world, subscribe, and send it to someone who's been blaming themselves for a door that was closed before they arrived. This channel is for the ones who want to understand, not just survive. I'll see you in the next one.